Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special video with Andy, my co-host of Endless Multiverse. It is the 10-year anniversary of the Arrowverse because Arrow's pilot aired on what was the exact date?
On October 10th, 2012.
Which that is when we're uploading this video. Sorry, we're recording a few days early. But we're here to rank in a tier list our thoughts on all of the Arrowverse shows pilots. And we're going through, going back and forth, giving our thoughts, and just ranking them as a tier list and see where we line up and where we maybe go a different path than the other. Because we'll definitely have difference of opinions on things. This is pretty crazy. 10 years of the Arrowverse. It's pretty insane. And you've been covering The Flash since the beginning. Like you've had, of course, the Flash podcast, and
I've been covering Arrow since the beginning. Like I wrote reviews. I was everywhere, and I know that initially, because we had, we talk, because everyone and their mother keeps bringing it up to us when we do streams about like 10-year anniversary and Arrowverse turning 10 years old. Initially, we had looked at the idea, like maybe like reacted to all the pilots, but that's just too many episodes to watch and too much editing. Yeah, but so this is a way better idea, and I would love to hear what you guys in the comments have to say about it. Because these are, it's so funny to look at these pilots now, years after they've aired. For Arrow it's been 10 years. Supergirl Lois, for example, like that's the more recent one. It aired only like 2 years, like a year ago. So it's interesting to see where we are now and how do some of these pilots still hold up? Or some of them, falling a little bit short? So it's interesting.
Yes. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to start. We're going to, of course, pull up here. Arrow. Of course, we have this tier list made by someone else, thankfully, and they have all the other seasons, but we pulled the posters for the first seasons to highlight and give the pilot. So first of all, of course, is Arrow. Now, I'm just going to go out and say it. I think it's a fantastic pilot. I love this pilot so much. I love the first episode. It really just it surprised me when I first watched it because I kept seeing on Netflix like Arrow 2 seasons. I'm like, okay. So I finally just watched it and I was blown away by the episode. I loved how they set everything up. Of course, once you see the season 5 finale, kind of gives different perspective on where this episode ends up. But in terms of establishing this new Green Arrow, I'm all for it. I love how they established everything. It was so, because I wasn't expecting it to go that dark and to go that route it did. But man, I really enjoyed it. I gotta just be honest.
Yeah, for me, we're gonna switch to my screen. So for me, I remember when it came out, it was one of the best things that I'd ever seen in terms of like series premieres or whatnot. Like I really loved the, because I love Green Arrow from Smallville. I was already, becoming a huge fan of Green Arrow. But for me, this is a pilot that sadly suffers too much because of the later seasons where like a lot of the premise that we came to know with Arrow was just not really fulfilled for me by the time the show came to an end. And, again, season 5 is where like I really, like it made me really lose a lot of love for it because now in 2012, would have imagined that, long-haired, bearded Oliver Queen was actually just wearing a wig. And I mean, even though we knew Stephen Amell was wearing, I was like, they actually had Oliver go and get a wig and a beard. And, for me, because I'm a huge fan of Green Arrow Year One. That's like one of my favorite comics. And that's what the show, at least with the Flashback initially, were kind of loosely based on. So the fact that it just, again, all that premise and promise that they kept saying, we know exactly what we're doing with these flashbacks for 5 years, but at the end of the season 5, you could tell that they had no fucking idea what they were doing in the flashback after season 3 at least. They're like Hong Kong, Russia, then he's back on the island. I don't know. So for me, I will give it. I mean, I can't really put. It's somewhere like in between A and B. Like so, so it's gonna end up at B here. Good. Like I think when it came out, it was fantastic for me, but now I would say it's somewhere between like B+ or /A-.
And that's a fair point because literally it does take away from the pilot once you see the later seasons, especially where it revealed, like we know Steven's wearing a wig, but Oliver's wearing a wig at that moment. It is frustrating, but at the same time, I'm just thinking back on when I originally watched it and just was like, so shocked, and then I binged through the first 2 seasons so fast,
Yeah,
and I fell in love. So that's where I'm coming from. But hey, I get it, because I was
but
quite surprised.
I
Like,
was saying
really?
it was a very well produced pilot, and I get like the first season I really loved season 1, and like for me the show just doesn't feel like what it was, what it was from the first 2 seasons, where like it just got a little too out of control. So, but listen, I think that, after you guys see some of my other thoughts, I'm sure, people, I'm still holding the Arrow Pilot high up, no matter what. But let's go to the next one.
The one you're probably most excited about. I'm curious to see what you're going to rate it. We're switching over to me again. We're talking the Flash pilot. It is phenomenal. Like, it's so crazy how his appearance in Arrow was a great setup. He woke up in his own show. Like, literally, he woke up in his own show after getting struck by lightning in Arrow's episode 9, season 2. And we got to see this different side of the Arrowverse, because it's only been just Arrow at this point. And to kind of see Central City, to meet Iris, Joe, and then Cisco, Caitlin, and who is this Dr. Wells? And then, of course, was it Weather Wizard? Like,
yeah,
it was
the first one.
The first one. It was such a cool thing, and I gotta give it a fantastic as well. I really do. I feel like these 2 pilots to me are my favorite pilots. That pretty much gives you an answer to where I'm going to rank the other ones. But yeah, this is definitely up there in terms of the quality that I expected from these shows, and I love it so much.
Yeah, for me, it's no secret. 8 years later, 9 years later, almost, this pilot is, it holds up so well, and I think that the show definitely changed, like in terms of like just a little bit of its tone and stuff. But at the end of the day, the Barry Allen, for example, that I came to know and love is still the Barry that I see to this day, and a lot of the characters are still with the show that we've now seen grow for almost 9 years. It's I definitely think it's one of the best Arrowverse pilots we've ever had. Where because I still remember being seeing it at Comic-Con, seeing it all like on the big screen, and it was there was AC because San Diego was hot as fuck. So, it was just nice to be able to like capture everything and not be like draining in sweat. But the pilot just, it gets you so excited. And again, it's like, I feel like I've shown this episode to like a lot of people who are not even comic book fans. And even just watching this one episode, even if they don't stick with the whole show throughout the whole way, it gets them to start watching it because of what they do here. And it's, again, like I remember like Barry taking on Weather Wizard, that just look. I'm like, this cannot be a TV budget. This is too insane for us to be seeing this. And of course, I remember. Even I wish they hadn't spoiled it for us. Having that pivotal moment between Oliver and Barry on the roof is where, like, okay, Steven and Grant are great, acting partners. They bring out the best in each other, and this is a dynamic I hope we see, as much as possible, despite them having their own shows and being busy with filming and so on. But yeah, and like, of course, as a West Allen shipper, I feel like this is like, West Allen is the best ship in the Arrowverse, and I think this pilot just sets the foundation so well, and also because it learns so much from the mistakes that Arrow made in season 1, and by that they made sure that it didn't happen in the way they were setting up the Flash as a show. So, like Iris gets a phenomenal introduction. We really cement that relationship that we know is going to grow and evolve and become the stuff of legend. So, yeah, the Flash part, I can just put it on now and just, again, like I can, and there's still things you will rediscover with it that you didn't know the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But
for sure. It's phenomenal what they pulled off, especially the effects of the tornado. Like, that was insane. And then doing what I consider a big reveal or a big moment is Joe finding out immediately what Barry can do. I thought that was I didn't expect that. I was quite surprised. I thought they're going to go the route of, Joe, Iris, like none of them knowing anything for a while. And they surprised us. So we're jumping over to a 1-season show that it got retroactively put into the Arrowverse because of Constantine showing up. And unfortunately, only 1 season. Of course, he popped up in Legends and Arrow and everything. I got to give it a good. I think that the pilot was, I think, pretty interesting, and I remember watching it and going, I like it. I'm going to continue watching, but I wasn't blown away by it. But I really liked the setup of it. And then over time, I mean, Matt was already, I think, pretty good as Constantine, that pilot, but I really just grew to love him more and more as Constantine. Like now, when I think of Constantine, I think of him. And of course, he's voiced the character quite a bit in animation. Of course, has appeared in live action, of course, in several places. Of course, his show. Yeah, I got to give it a good tier. I really enjoyed the setup, and it's unfortunate we never got more. But thankfully, they found a way to bring him in because NBC, it was NBC, I believe.
Yeah.
Canada.
At the weirdest time, so they would air at Fridays at 10 p.m.
Yeah, I remember that time slot. It was a really bizarre. Like they didn't give it a chance, in my opinion, to really shine. It's unfortunate, but yeah, gotta give it a good tier.
Yeah, for me, because I remember this was also one of the shows that I would review on a weekly basis, and I remember feeling like, because I wasn't a huge, like, I didn't know much about Constantine from the comic. I wasn't a huge Constantine fan, like in the comic. I mean, not that I was against it, I just didn't know much about him. But I've talked to people who were saying that, oh my god, like this show is like really, if you're gonna adapt a lot of the things that comes from the lore and so on. And I remember like the thing that just pulled me in instantly was Matt Ryan's performance in that pilot. I think. I mean, yeah, this pilot didn't have a lot of characters, but this was so funny because they had a different female lead, and then I don't know what really happened, but it was obvious that they did not like the direction with that character, and like they basically had to end up like they reshot it so that she actually isn't part of this. By the time we go to episode 2, she has no part, and that's when they bring in Zed.
I remember that.
And actually, like, she was actually kind of annoying, not Zed, like the other one, who I can't even remember her name. That's how bad it was. But I love that, again, because I love magic. I love seeing it from the DC Universe perspective. And they did a lot of good things, for a show that I can tell NBC didn't necessarily really believe in. Like, again, like, you don't put a show on Fridays at 10 p.m. I get what they were trying to do because they wanted to be a little more darker and agier. But it's like, you could have put it at 8 p.m. because there was nothing really at 10 p.m. that I was just like, oh no, this can't be shown at 8 p.m. So for me, I think I'm also putting it at the B tier at good. It's I think they should have had a bigger villain, a bigger threat. Someone that is like very memorable. So I think that's the thing that's also the same thing. The problem with the Arrow pilot is that it's just like one of these like corrupted businessmen, like again with the Flash, it's like we get one of the weather wizards. Like it feels big, it feels dangerous. The demon that I think Constantine fights in the pilot is just for me like I don't know how much that would hook you in to see like what he's gonna be doing, whatever and so on. But again, it's definitely a good tier one. And and I know people are probably gonna start asking in the comments, like, how is this considered part of the Arrow and so on? Well, one, the people behind Arrow said that they regard the Constantine show on NBC as canon to them. Like everything that happened in season 1 has happened, but they just don't always like bring it up or reference and so on. But like we've seen footage used from the show, like even with the Astro being snatched away, and yeah, so it's like, yeah, for me, like again, like I was telling when we started recording, it becomes canon retroactively, kind of like how they make Smallville part of the Arrowverse multiverse, at least. Even though, because Smallville, we're not putting the Smallville pilot on here because it's not part of the franchise that we came to know as now, but it's like you could still see it as part of that multiverse of it takes place on Earth 167, and but yeah, so that's Constantine.
And they also made a point when he appeared in Arrow season 4. But sorry, I threw up a little. But when you talk about when he appeared, they didn't go out of their way to make it like he's a different Constantine. They made it to where they're pretty much implying it's the same one without saying it. But like they could have made changes to him appearing, but they made a point to like, nope, same voice, same outfit, and it's pretty clear. This is going to be interesting because we're talking Supergirl. Look, I still have not finished the show. And honestly, I got to be honest with you. I have to be honest. I think the pilot to me is okay at best, in my opinion.
What?
Yeah, I don't love it. And I'll tell you why. I felt that, like, obviously I continued watching, but the more I think about the pilot, the more I'm like, it just didn't fully bring me in. I like the sequences of her discovering and figuring out her suit and really embracing, actually using, like, being a Kryptonian on Earth. But like some of the stuff, like especially with, like, even though Kat is a great character, I just felt like the way they set it up in the first episode, it wasn't working for me right away. But that's just me. But there's just some things that I wish they would have done differently, and I wish I could love it. I wish I could. And the thing is, the show definitely had some great moments in season 1, and especially season 3 with Ray, and I love that season. I just felt like the pilot just didn't really work for me as much as I wanted it to. But it's completely fine, because to me, the show got better at parts. And at one day I will finish the show. But yeah, I mean, I just were kind of saying with Arrow, where it's kind of like in the middle between A and B. I think it is more kind of in the middle, but I'll go with okay, because the more I think about it, I'm like, well, it didn't blow me away like I wanted it to, because I was actually really excited for this show, and I'm glad that I continued watching it, because if I would have stopped, I would have missed some great stuff from the show, obviously. But yeah, I got to stick with C tier, and that may change though. That may be a B if I rewatch it again, and really try to, like, just go with it, just try to embrace more of it. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there. That's where I'm going to stick with.
So what Jordan is saying that he hates women,
Yep.
but for me, because I was already excited for Supergirl. Like, I was a huge fan of Melissa Benoist from Glee, and I was a fan of McCall Brooks. So and also Cutlass of Lockhart. So I was. So for me, and like the pilot felt so cinematic, and again, it's such a great introduction to Supergirl just as a character. Because here's the problem: Supergirl's gone through so many iterations of the comic. Because like these days, probably like they probably lost count at this point how many times they try to revamp the character. And this pilot just feels like such a great introduction to her world. Now, again, I would say that after season 3 is when the show started to decline for me, and I was by the end, I finished watching to season 6. But the pilot, again, like for me, just holds up so well, despite the problematic seasons that they do have. But again, it felt like, also because we hadn't had any female DC shows at that point. What Supergirl was the first one since Wonder Woman in the late 70s. So, and again, like I said, it feels so cinematic, very similar to The Flash, but also being its own thing, which I think is great, and just kind of modernizing some of the Superman lore a little bit, which I thought was great. Kind of like, what would Jimmy's life look like if he wasn't working at the Daily Planet? Like, what could you do more with Cat Grant besides just being a gossip reporter for the Daily Planet? And of course, exploring the other side of the L family. Like, I love the plot twist with Aunt Astra at the end. So yeah, for me, like, this is like definitely, even though I don't like rewatching the later season, like, I will sometimes just throw on the Supergirl pilot, because it has so much heart and hope that that you want to see from that's how, like, when it comes to Superman projects, that's how I feel like when I watch Man of Steel, Smallville, Supergirl definitely falls into that category for me.
I do agree with the cinematic thing. That was something I actually forgot to mention, but
because it was on CBS back then, so like,
it was.
They had way more resources than CW did,
and the viewings were the same. But yeah, it was really smart. There's actually a shot of Supergirl from that pilot that I love to, like, see people, like, post randomly from time to time as a GIF or something. It's like where she's, like, floating, like she's flying, and then she just starts to slowly float. I don't know what it is, but like I remember seeing that for the first time, going, "Holy crap!" But then, of course, after the pilot, everything, the budget went down. But still, like, that cinematic wise and the CG definitely was better in that pilot, because they had to make a strong opening. So next up, we have a two-parter, technically, Legends of Tomorrow. I've thought a lot about this, because I was trying to think, where do I put this thing? Where do I land Legends? Because as we all know, we're all thinking about Legends. I'm going to have to go with good. And I'll tell you why. I think they did a great job of establishing the team, especially with how they were like going about getting them all together and the mission. And of course, we had seen that trailer when they had Stephen and Grant up there as Arrow and Flash together, but then they reshot that whole sequence or whatever because they didn't need them in the pilot or in that sense on that rooftop. I remember that trailer coming out and they were like, oh my God, Vandal Savage, what?
Yeah. Oh, it wasn't, but that wasn't. Yeah, the thing was like that was so funny. It was never a pilot. None of that was really a pilot. It was just a pilot presentation because they're like, we gotta show the advertiser something in May.
So when they reshot the rooftop, they didn't have them at all. Like when they actually shot it, like they were of course showing footage from when they had first shot their, because some of the stuff that was in that presentation was actually in the episodes. Then you have of course Hawkman dying in part 2, and the setup was anything can happen on this show in terms of character deaths and switch outs. Obviously, like I don't think they really held up to that later on, but in terms of taking a group of characters from different shows and pulling them together, I think it worked as good as it could be. And yeah, it doesn't really go to it kind of falls after that part, but I will say with the 2-parter, which I was surprised was a 2-parter, but with them doing 2 episodes to establish all these characters and their where they're at now or where they were at the time, and then the being together as the legends, it was definitely better than, I think it was definitely better than it should have been. But at the time I was excited because we're gonna get a team up show, But yeah, I'll stick with good. I think I'll stick with good for that.
Christ. For me, and when Andy says Christ, that doesn't mean anything good.
No.
I was so excited for this show, and I felt in the end the pilot just it doesn't work for a lot of reasons for me. Even though I did stick with the show for the end of it. One is that Rip Hunter becomes such an unlikable character from the get-go. Where again. Because when you have a title like Legends of Tomorrow, which again they should have just called DC's Legends. It didn't need to be called Of Tomorrow because they rarely would say Legends of Tomorrow on the show even. So for me, if you have a title like that, it needs to feel something special, and then find out that Rip had just lied to them, that they were these are characters that instead of having significance in history, the reason he was able to pull them out of the timeline is because they didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And it kind of says again, I know some are kind of well, now this show helps them give them a purpose, but it's no, we should be watching the show because they already have a purpose, because because the other shows were getting a little overcrowded, and that's why they even made this spinoff. So Rip is completely unlikable. I think in hindsight, I regretted they ever took Captain Cold away from us on The Flash because, and here's the thing. For people who are going to start going in the comments, but when we're wanting to leave, here's the thing. I don't give any shits about that. I still wish that they had been on The Flash for how long they were, and then eventually, whenever Wormwood felt done, not have to kill him off anything like that, because now we're going to the final season, and we don't, if we even see Captain Cold, it would have to be someone from the multiverse, and he'd wait. I don't know what the fuck this show thought this was, but by the end of the season, I was like, whatever Dominic Purcell played did not feel like that and so on. Hawkman on Legends Tomorrow is probably one of the weakest character portrayals of a DC character I've ever seen. No offense to the actor, but because I do think the casting is usually very spot on in the Arrowverse. This dude, I mean, some of us on the podcast network that I produce, we call him just Hawk Bro, rather than Hawkman. For me, this doesn't feel like Smallville's Hawkman is 10 times better. And I didn't like the friction between Martinstein and Jax, and it was just in the end for me. I'm gonna put it at not great.
Wow. Very different on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's it also tells you something that when they even have to make it as a 2-part, because we've never had a 2-parter pilot in the Arrowverse. It says something that they need an additional episode to keep telling this initial story that you're supposed to pitch to your fans of here's why you should be watching the show. Mm-hmm. You should be able to capture me from the first episode Like, you shouldn't have to make me watch 2 episodes back to back. Or I don't even remember if they aired back to back or if it was one this week and one that week.
I think they did. It's like a 2-hour premiere. If I remember correctly. Because I think I watched it live.
Here's the thing. I watched every single pilot here live. I watched everything live. Like, I've been there from the beginning. Like, I'm one of the Arrowverse people in the community. So, like, for me, I've been committed to this franchise. But again, like, I was so excited. I'm like, okay, this could be something different, something special. Like, finally a team-up show. And then right after the pilot, you can kind of tell that this show didn't really know what they were trying to do with it. So feel free to hate away in the comments, but
they'll love you. They'll love you no matter what. We're moving on to Black Lightning, a show that surprised me. Like, I was like, oh, we're getting a Black Lightning show. I remember like hearing the rumblings that we were getting a Black Lightning show. And I got to be honest, thinking more about that pilot, I got to give it a great. I really liked the Black Lightning pilot. I felt like they did a good job of establishing him going back out there, being Black Lightning, Jefferson, like, and then seeing like it was the flashback stuff, and then his family and how he's in a very different place now. And I felt like they did a really good job of establishing like the world that Black Lightning takes place. And then of course the whole question was like, okay, so is this in the Arrowverse? Is this on Earth Prime or what the other shows? And it was like, no, it's not. But it didn't need to be. I felt like this hero, Jefferson, I don't know. I mean, of course, until later, till Crisis and everything, when he's brought in, and of course he's running into everybody, and he's now on Earth Prime. I feel like at that time, if he was connected to Barry and Oliver, it would have been a very different approach. Like, say, like he was like introduced on one of their shows or something. I like that he was a hero back in the day, had retired essentially after all these years, and then came back with that new suit. Like, that first suit, I really liked it. Like, yeah, it was a little weird, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I like this suit. I like it. And I think they did a really good job of setting up his personal stuff and then him coming back after all these years and just setting up the dynamic of the characters and how it's going to play out. Because I really felt like that pilot set up where the show was going to be heading in terms of the characters and, you know, just how they were going to tell its first season. I felt like they did a really good job. A really good job.
But for me, because I remember when this was even being developed for Fox, you know, where I'm like, wow, they're gonna do another DC show on Fox. I didn't know much about Black Lightning, but I was already a fan of Chris Williams, and and also of Christine Adams, who played Lynn Stewart on the show. Because for me, because this was a point where like we had seen, you know, the era has started to flesh out and so on, but it felt like very much of the same, where like it was very like, and I'm gonna say it was very white. There was not a lot of representation in this franchise. So for me, being a man of color myself, and also, you know, following just the world of politics in general and so on, I'm giving this the highest one, because here's the thing: it was so different, and in all the best ways possible. Just the opening of that pilot is just so like. You wouldn't think it's a superhero show until you get through the first couple, like 5-10 minutes or something like that, because they deal with, you know, with politics. You know, like this pilot goes straight into that there is racism is rooted in Freeland, and how, you know, what kind of figure Jefferson is for the community, because, you know, he's this well-established principal and has a lot of respect of people in Freeland, and we see how politically active Anissa is. You know, I mean, he literally goes out to, you know, bail her out from prison, or from you know, from the police station, and there's a very powerful song that is played that I know like some of my friends at the Black Lightning Project were like thrown off, like this would never be expected from a CW show, because again, like Black Lightning is rooted in the world of politics and the racism that they had to face. You know, initially Freeland doesn't even exist in the comics. They were, you know, Jefferson actually lived in Suicide Slum in Metropolis, you know, in the rougher parts of Metropolis. So he had to become the protector of that neighborhood where Superman would not go. And you know, again, like we just see so much from like the thing is, this was a family superhero show. You know, we see that, you know, we don't get an idea yet what Jennifer's gonna be doing, but we get an idea. And there's something going with Miss Anissa, okay? And Tobias Will, oh my fucking god, Tobias Will is one of the best villains in the Arrowverse. Condon is a fucking legend, and like he can put some of these villains in the Arrowverse to shame, like for real. Like I would just love to see them go and smack Ali Allison being like, bitch, you think you're so cool because you got a cold? Let me show you something. I will let me show you what real power is. So yeah, Blacklight for me, like that pilot is just, I wish we had more pilots like this. Sadly, we do not. We haven't gotten more pilots like this on the CW, at least for DSTV. But it's definitely up there for me when it, like, in the similar veins of the Flash, the costume. Yeah, because I was very like, there's a very different way of doing a costume, but like, they explain it. There's a reason why it has to be that way, because like the functions are explained, which I think is great. And here's the thing. I kind of wish they had established this was on Earth 1 this whole time, but like you didn't have to explain. Like this could just take place on the east, on the same world, but just like it didn't need to be set up through Arrow to Fly, because I feel like if this had been part of Earth 1 this whole time, I also, because sadly some fans just wouldn't watch the show because they're like, oh, it's not Arrowverse, I don't care. And some of we all, you know, and then we're some people that they're like, ew, black superheroes, yuck, I don't like that. I wish they had kind of established it and then done crossovers in later seasons. Yeah. I think that like I think they overcomplicated themselves too much on that front. So, but yeah, I just, you know, and I'm hoping, you know, Blacklight is on Netflix. So if you never did give the show a watch, go check it out. You know, it's pretty good.
It's definitely worth the watch. And yeah, I mean, I was actually surprised. I'm like, because I remember like hearing about they were shooting the pilot and all that kind of stuff. Like, okay, we're getting this, and then I hear it because they shot the pilot and then they got picked up. So. But yeah, it was good. Now we're jumping over to Batwoman.
Oh Lord, I just saw which one it was. Why is he freaking out?
Batwoman. So I remember watching this live. Slight hiccup there. Apologies. So I think it's either okay or good. I don't know where I'm going to put it. Because I think the establishment of Kate and Gotham, I think, was interesting. And I'm going to stick with good for now. I might change it before the video ends. I'm not sure. But I feel like they did a pretty interesting job. Plus, I also liked it. Like, I was surprised by this. That, obviously, it was set up before the events of Elseworlds. So, when she first puts on the suit, it's a modified Batman suit. And I honestly liked it. I don't know why. Like, of course, the red hair, the iconic, and of course, the red in the suit is what makes a Batwoman. But for some reason, I really dug that she was in like just Batman's like suit altered. There are some lines in that pilot that should have been reworked because the marketing really pushed those lines, and people were like going against it immediately. I feel like there's a lot of people that didn't give the show a chance because of some of the marketing and how they pushed the first episode before it aired. I think it's definitely, like, if you watch the trailers and didn't see the pilot, you would think the pilot is complete shit. If you have a certain mindset, or if you're just like, what are they trying to do with this? It's definitely better than the way they marketed it, because I think they had some pretty good stuff from the marketing, which doesn't make sense because you want to show the cool shit, but they hit a lot of it. But I'm going to leave it for
regular CW problems, sadly, like that they market the shows in very weird ways, and then they actually end up being different when you actually see the full product.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to leave it at good. I felt like, regardless of the whole situation later on with Ruby Rose and the whole thing of the firing, quit, whatever nonsense, I'm going to leave it at this because I felt like it was after all of the marketing and everyone getting all pissed off and angry, it actually delivered better than I thought it would. And I was like, you know what? Because I was completely honest in my reaction. I told people going into the episode for the pod, I'm like, guys, I'm going to watch it with an open mind, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion. And I came out going, okay, I want to see more. And I'm glad I stuck with it because, you know, there are some bad moments in season 1 of Batwoman. There's definitely some questionable things, but there were some also good things that I liked about it that made me go, this feels like a Batman kind of show with Batwoman. And Ruby, I think she got better over time playing Kate in season 1. There was definitely some moments, and we won't get into all the nonsense, but the pilot, I got to be honest, I liked it. I did.
Well, for me, this one is tricky for me because I ended up being more apologetic for it when it first aired. Because I think like one of the things that, and again, this is the sad thing, is that they sell the other characters a lot better than they do Kate. Because I feel like Ruby Rose just need a lot of time to really get into that character. Like I think like the MVP of that episode of that pilot is Rachel Skarsten as Alice.
Oh yes.
But it's definitely a problem when the villain is outshining the hero in that type of regard. And like, I loved, Luke Fox kind of being this kind of like, being hesitant working with Kate.
As he should.
I loved Mary. She was, like that. Like that's one of like consistently awesome characters of that show. But for me, I feel that being, again, because the thing is, I look at this as a Batwoman show. I don't look at it as a Batman type show, but just with Batwoman. And again, it's feel like having gotten as far as we did in the Arrowverse, there should have been way more special than it actually was. But the fact that for me, it only falls into okay. I'm like, this should have been better than the Arrow pilot, because when Batwoman was being conceived, this was a show that was going to take over for Arrow. We knew that Arrow was coming to an end, and Batwoman would be like kind of representing the vigilante, street side of the Arrowverse. And the pilot, and when I see the pilot, I'm like, this is the best they could do. And for me, like, I love that it was very. It was very feminist. It was very feminist. It was very, reminding you that this follows a lesbian woman. But I feel that I felt there should have been more. There should have been more with this pilot than we actually got. And in the end, in retrospective, just knowing that Ruby is no longer really part of the show. Again, this pilot, like for me, the pilot that if we were talking about the Batwoman season 2 premiere, that for me is like the second pilot of the show. Where and that one does a 10 times better job selling you on the idea of Ryan Wilder as a lead and following her story and her adventure. But in this case, this is where I'm putting Batwoman at.
And that's completely understandable. Was also her writing in the journal, like writing to Bruce, that was in the pilot, right? When they first introduced that whole thing of Kate doing that. I thought that was interesting as well. And your whole point about it being more of it being Batwoman show, not a Batman type show. I only say that because literally we can't technically get a Batman show, but like they were trying to make it their own anyways, with her making her own, wanting to make her own suit later on. And
the reason I say it is because I don't like the idea that this is a Batman show, but just a different character. Because I feel like it diminishes that character, her importance as a character. It's like, oh, she can't stand her own without being just, like in this version. But it makes sense because Kate is Bruce's cousin, and but also here's the thing. That motherfucker left Gotham, yo. Like he didn't stick around. He just ran that shit.
And we'll never know. We
will never know. So it's like for me, I'm like, that's why I feel like this show deserves to be called a Batwoman show and not just a Batman show with Batwoman on that. Because again, it's like Batwoman has her own mythology, her own villains, and her own kind of things that she deal with. But I think if there had been a better creative team, behind it, I think this could have been something different. But again, like I felt season 2 and 3 of Batwoman were great. Season 3 is the best season of Batwoman. But CW stays CW, I guess. So
CW stays CW. So we're going on to Stargirl. We're on the last 2 now. Stargirl, and I'm gonna go out and just say it. I think it's great. I love it. I love this pilot. I felt like they established Courtney really well and her finding the staff. And I feel like they did a really good job just like setting it up in its own world as being Earth 2, obviously with Crisis and everything. But I remember watching it and going, let's see what happens. Because I thought the trailers were good. And then the opening sequence of the JSA taking on the ISA. Is it ISA? Yes.
Injustice Society, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it wasn't Injustice. It's like,
Oh, did you see it on TV or did you see it on the DC Universe app?
I think I watched it on the app because I watched it. Because I recorded my reaction to it, and but yeah, I love the opening. Of course, we had seen that in the marketing a little bit, but I like the fact that we had this great long sequence, and then there's Courtney, and of course, moving to a new town and moving away, and she's obviously just really upset. I like the fact that it really showcased and focused on her specifically in terms of her struggles and moving to Blue Valley, and it's Blue Valley, yeah, and her getting the staff, and then just everything starts to unfold, and then of course the ending, and just like what, and then it cuts. I felt like they did a good job of establishing the tone of it as well, because this is a very different type of show because of the fact that our lead is not a adult. Our lead is still in high school, going to a new town. It wasn't like with Oliver, who's of course been gone for 5 years, but coming back to his city that he grew up in, or Barry, where he literally has been there all his life in Central City. Courtney's moving to a new place, meaning all new people, and her family has been all changed up now because now she has a stepdad, and she doesn't want to do all this stuff. And now her life is completely upended and completely changed because of a few small decisions she makes. So I feel like they did a really good job with it. So I want to leave it as great. I felt like it established the show very well. And when you continue to watch the show, especially during season 1, if you want to compare it to the other episodes of that season, they did a good job of representing what the show was going to be based off this pilot. So I gotta give it a great. That's where I'm going to go with it.
For me, I've always loved the Justice Society of America, and I always enjoyed Stargirl as a character. And with this show, I was excited for a superhero teen show because at that point we hadn't had it in a while since Smallville and Gotham, really, that started with Bruce and Clark as teenagers. But this show, like, also just seeing like how they are, because at this point in the Arrowverse, even I was loving the franchise, it felt like they were somewhat also a little afraid of sometimes going to the comic bookness of what they were based on. Stargirl, they don't give a fuck. They just go completely where the costumes are straight up from the comics. Like when I saw Stripe for the first time, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? We're gonna have this robot like looking so good. He's gonna be here in like every episode or whatnot. And we have this, like, again, the pilot opens up with the JSA versus the ISA. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? This is unbelievable. So for me, and here's the thing, this show knows what it wants to do. It has its identity. And like I could tell from the pilot that this show has a direction. They know what they want to do. They know how they're gonna go about it. And I felt they even know how they would end it. So for me, and they have such likable characters. Breck is so good as Stargirl. Luke Wilson as Pat Dugan. Again, like this is and like Jordan was saying, this pilot lives up to the rest of the season. Where like it feels like you're reading a complete graphic novel of 13 chapters where they're all living up to what they wanted to do. So for me, I'm giving it fantastic. Like I still rewatch it at this point, and I'm just like, I love it even more because again, like it is so proud of what it's based on that it's for me, it's impossible to put it at anything else. So, and yeah, and also like that, this was another show that had like visually it looked very different too, where like it felt a little more cinematic, and just because I remember like just seeing some of those staff sequences were just. It was great. And like I remember like when we saw Icicle, I'm like, holy fuck, this looks so good. But yeah, and also knowing the fact that this is a show that it is all again, because Crisis made it part of the Arrowverse already by saying that there's a reason they wiped out Earth too, because they probably knew that Stargirl was gonna, that was gonna be its Earth designation, and also in the comics that's where the JSA actually comes from. So and now so it's definitely part of this franchise in its own unique way, and I love it. I absolutely love that it exists. And CW, you punished us so much this year, so if you fucking don't give us season 4, I cannot. So, but let's go to the final pilot.
The final one. Now, So people are going to say, well, wait a minute. It's not on Earth. Oh, it's not on Earth Prime. Well, we covered Stargirl, and that's in the Arrowverse. And Supergirl, that pilot, was on Earth 38. So, and Constantine was not on Earth 1 as well.
And Black Lightning was on another Earth as well.
There's, many. So, Superman and Lois. There was a lot of people that were against the show because they saw Superman Tyler Hoechlin's appearance on Supergirl. They didn't like how there were some people that were against it because of how they portrayed him on the show and how it felt like they were like pushing him down to raise Supergirl up. And my whole thing is that it's a Supergirl show. This is the way they want to approach Superman. Obviously, he is a known figure. It wasn't like he's just some random guy.
Yeah, he's not a wimp or anything like that. It was just.
And so with this show, obviously, as we know now, stupid decision. It's not connected to Earth Prime. It's stupid. The way they established Clark and Lois's relationship and how he basically introduces her to the idea of like, I'm a Kryptonian. I'm not just the guy. And then the kids, like, the more I think back on that pilot, the more I'm just like, I was blown away by it visually and the way they established the characters and just the way they just basically reestablished Superman. And the suit is fantastic. I love the new suit. I can't get over it. I'm torn if it's fantastic or great. I don't know. I think it would go in the middle. I think I'm probably going to stick with. I might go great. I was thinking fantastic, but I think it's a great pilot. I might, if you were to ask me any other day, I might say fantastic. But I remember just being really surprised with how it established itself. And now we know why, because it's not connected. And so they're doing their own thing. But it's the fact that, man, it really just, it worked. It worked because of how they made this Superman, a little bit different. And having teenage boys, and especially moving back out to the Kent farm, I mean, it's a whole dynamic shift for the characters. And we're moving back out. And then, of course, we lose Martha. She dies in the pilot. Like, I was quite shocked by that. I was like, oh, okay. Because I heard that they had casted Martha Kent. Like, okay. But then they went through the whole flashback stuff and just kind of establishing a timeline. And I'm like, oh, they're killing her. And they do. And I'm like, wow. And it establishes that darker tone of the show that I think works, but it's not overbearing. And they did a good job of establishing all the secondary characters as well, I think. I remember in the pilot, they introduced Kyle. I hated Kyle with a passion. And you were supposed to hate him. But my God, I'm like, what's the point of him being on the show? The point is for me to hate him. But still, it's like, what's the point? But in terms of the dynamic between Jordan and Jonathan, I felt like that was good too. Because you see the differences in the personality of them and how they're both responding to the fact that, oh, yeah, we're moving. We're moving back to Smallville. It's insane how they pulled it off because, they had to do a lot of groundwork. And obviously all these shows had a lot of groundwork to cover, but I think it was good. It was great. And like I said, it could be either or, great or fantastic, but I'll leave it for now. That's where I'm going to leave it.
Yeah, my feelings on this is very, because I will say this: the finale this year did leave a very bad taste in my mouth. That has really changed my opinion on the show in general, because I don't like the idea of trying to sell this as like this is part of this friend that everyone loves so much, and then for them to just basically make this 180 that is really unnecessary. Again, you can have you can have several movies and TV shows set in the same world, but you don't have to have them cross over or say each other's names every fucking week or year to remember that. And I feel that it's because again, this is why also Crisis on Earth even happened as a crossover. It was to allow Superman Lois to exist and get a soft, clean slate, but still being part of this larger universe that we've come to love for the last 7-8 years or whatever it was at that point. For me, Superman is like one of my top 3 favorite characters of all time, and for me, you need to do something different with Superman every time you bring him back to live action for me to just be completely sold. For me, him having a family was not enough for me. Again, because the thing that this show benefits most from, and I think this is the problem I have with Lois sometimes, is I think that people and fans, they confuse great VFX and visuals and those cameras they film with, and they mistake it as great revolutionary writing, because this show doesn't really do a lot of different things that we haven't seen in other Superman properties. If anything, and this is what I think is so funny with Superman Lois, or with the CW Arrowverse in general, is that they have no problems taking a dig at Zack Snyder's Superman movies, or the thing that they did with Man of Steel and Batman Superman and so on, but yet they have no problems then also borrowing it or taking inspiration from, man. Like visually, because this feels like I could have seen. This feels like Zack Snyder for television in a lot of ways. And I'm sure people in the again, I'm the unlikable one on Endless Mode. I'm the unlikable host, which I'm completely fine with. But I also remember at the time I loved Jordan. I was fine with Jonathan. Kyle drove me absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But as I actually watched the pilot a couple of weeks ago, and I remember they don't really do a good job making Jordan that likable, even though you do understand some of his issues. Jordan and Jonathan also in the end, I'm like, he doesn't really stick out that much because it's so much. There's just a lot of focus on Jordan in that pilot, and Kyle again. I'm like, why do we have to we didn't have time to keep in, because in the pilot there was supposed to be a photo of Kara, Lois, and Clark, but they had to cut it for time. But yeah, we have no issues with leaving in a scene of Kyle bitching for 5 minutes about oh, you big city people are so nah. So for me, it's somewhere in between here for me. I will never put it up on fantastic. I will give it a B plus, maybe a good plus, because again, it's like visual effects. It's not enough for me to call this the greatest Superman thing we've ever seen and so on. And the thing is, Superman Lois is not the best Superman thing we've ever got. It's one of the better products we've had, but it's I hold Smallville and Man of Steel and the Christopher Reeve movies to way higher regard than I do Superman Lois. And the pilot for me, I'm you need to do more for a character that has existed for almost, I guess this would have been about 80 years at this point when the pilot came out.
Yeah.
So yeah. You know what? I will be nice. I'll put it a grade. I will give it a fucking grade. I'll give it a grade. I will give it a grade because, again, I love Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. I love Betsy Tulloch as Lois Lane. And, again, even though I don't think VFX should just completely disguise or just be the only reason why a show is amazing, it was wonderful to see him when he's when he shuts down the nuclear from exploding, he freezes all the water and he lifts it up and covers it. That was so cool. When we saw the stranger before knowing that it was John Henry Irons, and the plot was oh, it's Lex Luthor, and then in the pilot, that was so cool. But yeah, I will put it a grade, and also I will avoid conflicting with my two Kryptonians. But yeah. This is my list, and that's his list. So
yeah, let's do a wrap up right here. So Arrow and Flash are the pilot wise are fantastic for me. Black Lightning, Stargirl, Superman, and Lois are great pilots for me. Good tier is going to be Constantine, Legends, the 2-parter, and Batwoman. And okay is just Supergirl. And yours is you want to say it again?
Yeah, so for me, on my list for Fantastic is the Flash Pilot, the Black Lightning Pilot, and the Stargirl Pilot. On grade, it is the Supergirl and Superman pilots, Superman Lois. On the good tier, it is Arrow and Constantine. And they actually kind of look they kind of look pretty together here. They should kiss. Batwoman gets an okay from me. And Legends for me is it is the worst pilot. Of the entire Arrowverse.
We have some similarities and a lot of differences, as you guys have noticed. We're curious to know what you guys think about all the pilots and where do you rank them out of all of the pilots for all the shows. And
happy 10-year anniversary. Any reflecting? I mean, again, this could be its own video at some point, but it's I mean, this has been a weird year for the Arrowverse, but if you had to summarize in a few words why you love this universe so much, what would those be?
I would say I would say it's been a great journey, and it's been worth the journey, regardless of the things that I have disliked and have critiqued about the Arrowverse. But it's been a phenomenal journey with all the shows and them being different and similar in ways. The crossover events where it got to the point we got to Crisis, regardless of the outcome of it in terms of where they could have definitely made it better. But I loved what we've gotten from the Arrowverse, and even though it seems like it's coming to an end slowly but surely, we had a great run. I mean, they did amazing with the amount of, because at one point they had so many shows on at once. It was insane how much was going on, and the little references and then the crossovers that were kind of happening besides the annual one each year that we had for those years. It's been great. I loved it, and I hate that it's going away, but you know, we can appreciate what we had, you know, ultimately.
Yeah, for me, you know, because the Arrowverse was really much something that really helped and boosted my career in a lot of ways, you know, because I grew up a DC kid. I mean, like, fuck it, look behind me, like, almost everything there. I mean, like, look, for the love of God, I bought a Flash share, y'all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I grew up a DC kid. Actually, if you look right up there, that's a special Arrowverse banner, so that it has.
It's cool.
It has all the heroes we just talked about. How convenient.
How convenient.
How convenient. But yeah, for me, this franchise really, you know, for me, I love superhero stories. I love the DC universe, and just seeing like how ambitious this universe was. And again, this thing, every show, whether it is in a franchise, or if it's like, you know, like it could be a procedural, it could be a comic. Every season, every show has its rough patch and so on. But again, it's like, at the end of the day, like these are shows that I, you know, will always stick with me in one way or the other. You know, like it will be like, again, it just like, even if I didn't like that one season, I could always go rewatch a season I did love. The crossovers were like, again, like we were having annual television crossovers between multiple shows where it's like, and it came from the CW of all networks. Like we didn't see on we didn't have a superhero franchise on ABC or CBS or Fox or NBC. I mean, all of them had their own like one or two superhero shows. Like this, it wasn't part in this regard where they were going this ambitious of like having interconnected, you know, stories, you know, every once in a while, and having characters that could show up on each other's shows every now and then. It's incredible. And again, it's like, yes, with so many costumes to bring to life and so many aspects of, you know, and powers and relationships, there's so much that comes from the DC universe that we'll be able to see now on the CW for 10 years. So, you know, yes, it sucks so hard that we're getting closer to the end of the franchise. I feel like once Superman, Lois, and Stargirl are over, that's it. Like and it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck, but you know, we will always have these seasons. You know, whether you own it in physical media or on Blu-ray, DVD. Like, again, I'm so proud that I made this franchise part of my career, and that, you know, again, it gave me a following, and again, it allowed me to see some of my favorite characters I grew up with in live action and realize in ways that I don't think would have been possible without the Arrowverse. So. Yeah,
because they took a big swing with the amount of stuff that they covered in terms of characters and storylines and everything. So, I mean, it's still technically going, guys. We still got more to go. It's not like, you know, it's the end. Bye, everybody. We still got stuff left to continue to watch. So yeah, it's been fun. Like, we've now been running close to an hour. This was not planned to go this long, but it is a special occasion. Yeah. It was the Arrowverse 10-year anniversary as we're uploading this, and
our anniversary special that CW will not give you.
Yes, we're giving you something that they won't give you. So we want to know your thoughts, obviously, about your pilot ratings for all the shows. But we also want to know your thoughts about the Arrowverse in general. What do you take away from it? What do you think back on when you think of 10 years of these shows running and the crossovers, the characters, everything? We want to know your thoughts in the comments below. The crossover.
Yeah, thank you to Tom Ellis.
Yes. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, this long video, and hope you guys are having a good Monday, because Mondays are shit. But yeah, so hope you guys are
Go
doing
rewatch some Arrowverse pilots on Netflix, HBO Max.
Go rewatch some Arrowverse stuff.
Happy anniversary, Arrowverse. You don't look a day over 9. We love you.
Day over 9.
And here's for 10 more never gonna happen years because we are where we are. But you know, happy anniversary, Arrowverse.
Happy anniversary. And this was us when we were watching the Arrowverse shows.
We'll see, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Whenever.
Whenever.
Bye. Crazy.
But